think Picasso says, we're born artists.
Yeah.
We learn what that we're not. Why?
Yeah.
And I have a dear, dear friend of mine from my college experience who's an incredible music educator who is passionate about emphasizing music is a birthright.
Mm.
We are all musicians.
Yeah.
So I can't say, yes, you sing your own tune.
Welcome to YMI Talking, a podcast where the guests are so good, you'll wonder why the host is even talking. In each episode, you will hear one of the leaders of the Lehigh Valley's vibrant business hub. They will tell you the keys to their success, the mistakes they've made, and what they have in store for the future. Here is the host of YMI Talking, from YMI Insurance, Jimmy Honachik.
All right, that is me, Jimmy Honachik, and we are here with another episode of Why Am I Talking? And this is one that I couldn't be more excited about. I've had involvement in the arts in the past. I've involved on my children's school board, and you are someone who does all of these things. You are on the board of the Bethlehem Area School District. You are a performing musician yourself. And, you're an administrator at IceHouse, which is very involved in the art scene here. So, Silagh White, thank you so...
I bet you say that to all the girls. No, actually, it looks like that's how my name is pronounced, yes. But it's one of those Irish spellings. So, and what I mean by one of those Irish spellings is if you see Sean Bean, the actor, who always dies in everything.
Yes.
S-E-A-N, or Siobhan... Or Sinead O'Connor,
yes.
Right? It's S followed by a vowel.
Mm-hmm.
In this cultural language, that usually means a sh sound. Mm-hmm. So then the other rule,
yes,
rule is anytime there's an H, that cancels out the letter before it. Okay, so if you look
You're helping me so much right now.
Right, so if you look at Siobhan, S-I-O-B-H-A-N, there's no ba in there. So it's softened.
Yeah.
Okay, so my name, S-I-L, it's she-la, and then the A-G-H, the G is canceled out. So it's Sheila.
Sheila.
But if it was really pronounced Sheila, which I don't need
we can do that if you want.
No, we don't. No, we don't. But, and a lot of these Irish names, like Bridget, very Irish name. I named my daughter such.
Yeah.
But the original origin of that name is Brige, spelled B-R-I-D-E. No, that's bride. No, that's Brige. It's a wonderful way to recognize my Irish background. It's a whole nother story when I tell you about my maiden name, my maiden surname, which is Chiappetta. So my Irish Italian background is very much a part of my name, and it's also very much a part of how I identify and celebrate.
Can I just say how jealous I am? Because I grew up going to a Catholic school, and all my friends were Italian and Irish. Oh. And here I am, just a mutt of none of those. And so I never got to celebrate in any of the beautiful festivals or things that you guys have.
Jimmy, that makes you unique.
It does make me unique, but fine. Okay, thank you. Is it tough? I'm thinking a layman like myself would see your name and pronounce it, like I did, Silagh. When I'm thinking about when you're running for re-election or something like that, and the signs are out, people probably are used to calling you Sheila and don't even pay, a second look at that.
Oh, sure. Well, one of the things that it's just a par for the course, right? Yeah. So when I ran for my first term, our friend Kate Hughes came and helped me out with a little bit of a video that we put up on Facebook. I mean, it's just a tiny little gesture, but I pulled out the sign and Kate so sweetly just said, "What's with the name?" Love ya. So I just said, I plastered the formal or I'm sorry, the traditional way that people think about it, S-H-E-I-L-A.
Yeah.
And even so many people spell that wrong too, because I before E except after C.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, so it's never spelled right.
Yes.
But anyway, I said, Sheila, it's Irish. So there you go.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is a lot of the news media companies after that were pronouncing it correctly.
Oh.
And all I had to do was just that one little thing with
Yeah.
Kate Hughes. Thank you, Kate Hughes.
Big shout out to Kate.
Huge shout out to Kate. She's, what I love about working with Kate is that. That's okay. It's unknown. And speaking of,
you could put them live. That would have been fun.
No. Because usually, it would be. They would be mispronouncing my name. And I could say, I'm sorry, there's no person by that name here. Got the wrong number. But Kate Hughes just keeps it very real.
Yeah.
And she, her approachability is something that I admire and try to embrace in what I do.
Yeah.
So we just did another quick little video, which was definitely a joke. But I'm just running back and forth, and she stops and says, "Sheila, what are you doing?" "I'm running for re-election." Right. So, I mean, if you see my signs, it's, they're very sparsely put out there, because I refuse to raise money for a campaign. With all of the money that the school district needs directly, I in good conscience cannot ask for money for that. I can't.
Yeah.
So hopefully, if people are listening to this podcast, or if they know people who know how to pronounce my name, or even if they don't, that's fine. It's hopefully we'll see what happens. Just go vote, whatever you're going to do, just vote.
And I was going to say real quick, when are they voting?
Primary is May 20th.
Okay, May 20th.
And so hopefully I get, I'm only listed on the Democrat ballot.
Yeah.
I didn't cross list.
Okay.
Which most of the school board directors will do.
Yeah.
But I was taking care of my mom during signature collection time. Oh, wow. So it's fine.
Yeah.
It's what it is. And hopefully my name will have enough votes to get to the November ballot. And then, so you might see more activity after that.
And you're not new to this.
Oh, well, I still am.
Tell the people kind of your story, and it on that side of, like I said on your intro, I feel like there's 3 avenues we could take this conversation.
Sure.
Let's talk about, your involvement with the school board in the Bethlehem area.
Okay, great. I moved here 20 years ago for a job at Lehigh University. And at the time, my twins were 2 years old.
Aww.
Yeah, they're little babies. And so when we, moved here, we were lucky enough that the Lehigh University childcare was a place where, we could have them have full enrichment days while I was working. It was on campus, so it wasn't this big traumatic, oh my God, my babies, where are they? But when they got old enough for a school environment, my husband and I are oddly both Irish Italians. His parents are swapped. So it's his dad who was the Irish person and his mom who was the Italian person.
Yeah.
So that's where the name White came from.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, when we were, trying to decide what was next for our children, we were both raised in Catholic school. And Holy Infancy School was very close to my office. Yeah. And so when we went there and we, met the nuns who at the time were in charge of the school, it was like, oh my God, this is just like the environment we were raised in. This is fine. Yeah. And because we also, we had our family Catholic values that I wanted to instill in them. But after a while, after they got to their first communion, it was just evident that they needed to have a different environment because as twins, you're joined at the hip. Yeah. And also, I just can tell that they need to be challenged in a lot of different ways, academically and socially. So we decided to transfer them into the Bethlehem Area School District at middle school. And it was mind-blowing, the opportunities that these kids had. And we also are the kind of parents that want to provide opportunities for the kids so they can find their own way. So I'm still a practicing Catholic. I still go to Mass. Yeah. My children have decided that it's not for them. And I'm not going to do the Catholic guilt of this. Right? Won't do it. And, it's just something that they respect. They don't tease me about it. Yeah. And every once in a while when I'm being a mom and I'm just pointing out facts, don't do that guilt thing for me. It's, this is not a guilt trip. This is just factual information. But, the kids are now 22 years old. And I know that their foundation of that social justice Catholic which was what was so important to me, is not this conservative dogma of Opus Dei or anything. It was just this compassion.
Yep.
And that I'm so glad that we gave them that foundation. But I will tell you, when they were placed at Northeast Middle School, the principal said, "Do you want to be in the same classroom or do you want to be split?" Different classrooms. They needed.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And when I introduce my kids, I almost rarely identify them as twins. I mean, they get that enough.
Yeah.
And they're not identical, boy, girl. Hello. But they are individual people.
Yeah.
Okay. So all that said, when I was at Northeast, I just so happened to be doing, or when my kids were at Northeast, I just so happened to be doing a program called Lehigh, shoot. Oh gosh. It was Northampton Community College. It was leadership development, leadership Lehigh Valley.
Okay.
I knew it.
There we go.
Yeah. Sorry, Cheryl. Cheryl Dungan at the time was the one that was running that program. And the program is class-based. So once a month you get together and you learn a new system in the community. And it's the program in terms of leadership Lehigh Valley is to help grow board members for social agencies, organizations, but board members for nonprofit organizations. So we learn about the healthcare system and the judiciary system and the mayor, local government type of thing. And every month you just go to a different sector and you learn a lot about how the communities and all of these systems kind of interface. Right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't until the very last session that we went to Northampton County Jail and the detention center for juveniles. And I remember asking a lot of questions like, what programs are in place so that when a juvenile is returned back to the environment that brought them here, what programs help them rewrite their script?
Yeah.
So they don't have to continue to follow, the choices that they think they only have. And the presenter just like, you should run for school board. So I thought, you're funny. But it was at the same time that other things were happening that I just felt, I think that's right. I do want to run for school board. And I started pursuing Masters of Educational Leadership when I was at Lehigh and had a lot of mentors who really helped refine my understanding of what's best for students. And a lot of this was informed by my work as an arts administrator doing arts integration programming. When I strayed out of, in the 90s, in the early aughts. So it all just kind of coalesced into this understanding. And then right around the same time, I went on a field trip with my son's class, and they had done overnight camping at one of the Boy Scout camps up in the Poconos. And on the way back, I was having a conversation with one of the teachers on the bus, and we were just talking about, school and how the kids are doing and one thing after another. And the guy just like, you should run for school board. So it was just, I think the trigger was the Any Given Child program that really brought it back for me in terms of I have insights and I do understand a lot of the barriers of arts organizations doing effective programming that gets the kids making. Art is not supposed to be just this passive activity for students. There's nothing going to change them.
Yeah.
It really has to be something that they can relate to. And most often, everyone, no matter what your age, you relate to an experience as an audience member way deeper when you've done it yourself. You think about all of the fans that go see the Eagles. They've tossed a football in the backyard,
right? Or
they've been tackled or something like. Same thing with baseball, right? You do that. There's a culture to it also, right? But if we do this checkbox of activity in students' environment and experiences, where they saw the ballet, poop, done. They know everything they need to know about being, understanding this art form. Yeah. Do they? So it's not enough for just attendance. And, if you ask a kid about art we were all artists. I think Picasso says, we're born artists.
Yeah.
We learn what that we're not. Why?
Yeah.
And I have a dear, dear friend of mine from my college experience who's an incredible music educator who is passionate about emphasizing music is a birthright. Mm. We are all musicians.
Yeah.
So I can't say, yes, you can. You sing your own tune.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
And you are a musician.
I am a musician. Good segue.
Thank you. A bassoonist.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get there, and how do you continue to practice?
Okay. This is an interesting story. This will reveal a lot of my psychosis. But I was a flute player in high school, and usually a band has a lot of flute players, right?
Yeah.
And since I was Catholic school all the way through high school, our Catholic school band was like 10.
Yeah.
Like 4 flutists, a trombone player, maybe somebody who would say, I don't want to hang on to the saxophone. I'm going to play drums now, right? So it was a very small organization. And the band director at the time saw that I had a lot of aptitude for it. I'm not going to say talent, just it was a natural aptitude. It kind of like made sense to me.
Yeah.
So a lot of that was because my father was a huge opera fan, Italian opera fan.
Yes.
Wagner, not so much, but it was part of our lives growing up in that household. And I'm a child who was born in the mid 60s. So I became aware of things in the 70s.
Yeah.
And my older siblings were doing their musical exploration. So we had 8-track tapes of Boston. At the same time, I got Verdi. At the same time, I got Bread. Okay. So anyway, I was just a flutist because in 5th grade, when the band directors go around and say, what instrument you want to play? I want to play the drums.
Okay.
And my mom was like, oh, heck no. You're not going to play the drums. So I just picked up a flute. Yeah. And it was what I did. And so by my senior year in high school, my band director recognized that I needed to have a large ensemble experience. And I had all of my credits pretty much taken care of. And so I didn't need to fill my class schedule with electives. So he worked it out with the scheduler. It's a very long time ago. So I got back-to-back study halls so I could actually come in, take my first class, drive to the public school, be in their orchestra.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, this is what an orchestra feels like.
Yeah.
And so from that experience, then I was studying with the flutist. My flute teacher was from Lawrence University, which is in Appleton, Wisconsin. And it's Conservatory of Music associated with the Liberal Arts College. Okay. All undergrad. Mm-hmm. And so I applied, and my full intentions were to become a music educator. Yeah. I was going to be a band director, just like Mr. Hoffman, Mm-hmm. And what was interesting is my first year in this conservatory, I was really struggling to get a pure, clear sound. And as a flute player, your sound is produced when you blow across a tube. Okay. So like blowing into a pop bottle.
Right. Yeah.
And I had this little aperture on my lip. Mm-hmm. You can't see it on the camera, but you could see it. And what causes that, or what happens with something like this is, here's my whistle.
Oh, wow.
You can see it's all the way over here. Yeah. So in order for a clear, round aperture to go into the flute, I'd have to do this because it's on that side. It's
hold it behind your back, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah. And even then, so I was playing with, all of these different ways of holding it, and my fingers were great. I could read music great because, by the way, you want to be a really good sight reader, kids, never practice for your lesson. And your teacher will pull up duet music and make you read it.
On site, yeah.
It's like, so she knew that if I wasn't going to be really practicing all of my etudes, she could, she was smart.
Yeah.
Because I'm a really good sight reader. Anyway, so at the end of the first term, we were on 10-week terms. My flute teacher said to me, I noticed that in high school, you also played saxophone. Yeah. And so you're doubling. So, we're kind of short on bassoonist. Do you want to just try that? Sure. So I took one home for Thanksgiving break. suffered all the indignities of a beginner bassoon sound, which is very goose-like.
I would imagine, yeah.
Oh my God, squawk, squawk. My brother's like, are we having goose for Thanksgiving? Yeah, you're funny, huh? But anyway, after a couple of terms, my freshman year, it was like, I think this is my instrument.
Yeah.
I was nowhere near what I needed to be if I were going to audition on bassoon.
Right.
But I had teachers there that saw what was happening and they supported it. But they also held me accountable. So when I switched to bassoon, I just like, oh my God, I got to catch up.
Yeah, right.
I've got all this. And I remember spending hours and hours and hours just trying to get the sound right, where I would then excuse myself from assignments in music theory class because but I'm practicing bassoon. I've got all this, excuse. So at the end of the second term, I'm on academic probation. Surprise!
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Right. But a lot of that was because a music theory teacher saw it. They all knew what was going on, but they were not going to let me be a victim to this choice.
Yeah.
And so she held me accountable. And I really appreciated all that. Anyway, at the end of the first year, I decided I'm switching my majors. I'm now going to be a bassoon performance major. And so for the next 3 years, I'm doing whatever I need to do to get caught up and to just progress. And my senior year, I landed the principal bassoonist in the Green Bay Symphony.
Wow.
Right? And I still wasn't the best player, but okay, I think I'm on a direction here. I got a full scholarship and a stipend to my master's program at BGSU. In between undergrad and grad school, I was like, I got to learn how to make reeds.
Yeah,
because that's a big part of learning how to play bassoon. For me, is learning how to make reeds. And it just kind of went, because at the time, if I know now what I knew, that back then, I would have opted differently. But at the time, if one wanted to be a professor of music at a university, you were strongly encouraged to pursue your doctorate. So I just went.
Yeah.
And then after my master's program at Bowling Green, at Bowling Green, I was lucky enough to work with Robert Spano, who is a renowned conductor now, but that was his first gig.
Wow.
And so I really had a great experience working with him and with Bob Moore, who was my bassoon teacher. And right after that, I just said, oh, that's it. I'm going straight into my doctorate. And I went to Florida State and I lasted a semester. Wow. I was burnt out. Yeah. And I was away from my honey bun. And so I decided to stop. And moved back home with my mom. And sure enough, the band that I started with needed a director. Yeah. So I became a director for a couple of years, band directing, loved it. And in the middle of that experience, my bassoon teacher from Florida State was hired over at the Eastman School of Music. And he called me, he said, you want to come with me? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Eastman School of Music is on par with Juilliard. Wow. And, all of the top conservatories in this school. I'll be there. So I did. And, so from 1984, we'll call it that, to 1997. Wow. Fast track. Yeah. And now I have my doctorate in bassoon performance. Wow. Incredible experiences, incredible memories of some amazing conductors and working with colleagues, and also a lot of insight into what drives me now. So how do I practice now? I play with the Lehigh Valley Chamber Orchestra. Okay. And, from time to time, I get asked to come in and join other ensembles. It's not a lot because, it's politics, and it's also, you'd think there wouldn't be a lot of bassoonists in the area, but there's plenty. There's enough. Plenty. Yeah. You only need 2 in the orchestra, sometimes 3. Yeah. And, the nature of being in an orchestra is once you're tenured, you're there for a long time. And so, I'm waiting for someone to die before I have it. No, that's not cool. So you make your own opportunities, right? And I'm really glad that the Lehigh Valley Chamber Orchestra is there. And, there are other opportunities. Like I was in Jacoba's Punch, which was the house band for Touchstone Theater before COVID.
Get out.
Oh my God, it was so much fun. That was just amazing experience playing with Jason Hedrington, who's this renowned keyboard player in the community, and some of the other. And oh my God, it's just such a great experience. So yeah, if you really are passionate about the music, you find a way to play. Yeah. And so that's I mean, I'm playing with the Young Playwrights Theater this upcoming weekend. I'm just a bassoonist providing improvisational music to one of the plays that a kid wrote.
Oh, that's fun.
Oh, it's a ninja bassoonist just kind of goes around, have fun. Right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
There's one area of your life we still haven't hit.
Sure.
And that's arts. Hold on. Arts administrator?
Yeah.
Yes. I almost said director, and I know they're very different.
They are very different.
Yes.
Yeah. Arts administrator is basically you facilitating. Okay. So if you think about behind the scenes of a managing director or a producer in a film, what do they really do? Well, producers are the ones that get all the money to get the resources together and hire all the right people to make sure that the thing comes together. So an arts administrator, my area of expertise within arts administration is educational programming and audience connection. So, God, I got the bug for arts administration when I was at Eastman. And I was there in the mid 90s, which in the culture of America at the time, we were going through culture wars. And I don't know if you are familiar with Senator Jesse Helms. Basically, his statement on pornography is, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
Yep.
That's in reference to Robert Mapplethorpe's exhibitions, photographic exhibitions that were frontal nudity. And, it was shocking to a lot of eyes.
Right.
However, artists who are familiar with the art form of the body, like Michelangelo's David, you call that pornographic? Venus on a half shell.
They were for a little bit there, actually.
Right. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, it's this really interesting, kind of circle of here we go again. We've got the Puritans who are shamed of this, you know. Anyway, so in the 90s, I was really wondering about attitudes towards the arts in our country. And I was fortunate, again, lucky coincidences of where I and when I was at these institutions. The academic, the second in command, if you would, over at Eastman was Jim Underkoffler, who recognized that students who were leaving music institutions needed more in their background to understand the businesses they were about to get into. Whether you were going to go join a faculty, or you were going to, get into an orchestra. We needed to understand what the business part of this was. We spend most of our time in a closet by ourselves, getting ready to produce music exactly this way.
Right.
So he started a couple of seminars that basically, all right, this is what arts organizations do. This is how they run. Wow. And I started just having my mind blown with, okay, so there's a part of our arts management that raises the money, and there's the other part that spends the money. Yeah. And the musicians are just one of the assets. They're not, but we're an asset tool of the director. So the 19th century ideal of being a musician is you're basically doing what the director wants you to do. Right. Some ensembles are more collaborative, but you're basically hired to do it like that. Yeah. Right. So during this culture war, there was someone from the by the way, as a doctoral student, I also won the B contract with the Rochester Philharmonic, who performed in the same theater of the Eastman School. Yeah. So I had a chance to play in the orchestra for when they needed a third bassoon or contra. And because of these seminars, one of the things that we were encouraged to do was get an internship, an unpaid internship. But I forced my way into the Rochester Phil's administration.
That doesn't shock me, by the way.
ask Nan. She was the executive director at the time. I'm like, you don't have to pay me, but I want to be here. I want to be here. I want to be here. I was like, okay. Like, hold on, but I became the assistant music librarian. And so I was on the production side. That's the spend money side.
Right.
And, privy to a lot of conversations about, how budgets are made and what decisions of music are made based on size of orchestra. And do you have to rent the music, or do we have blah, blah, blah. So it was really interesting being on that side and working with guest conductors and guest artists and all that stuff. But during the culture wars, there was a time when a lot of arts organizations were starting to feel a pinch because that impacted the National Endowment for the Arts, which now cut funding to individual artists. And, there was a transformation going on where most of the money, we jokingly refer to it as they were going to the SOBs. Symphonies, operas, and ballets. Right? But what about all this other art, like folk art and film and all this other things? So there was a letter written by one of the musicians directly to the Democrat Chronicle newspaper of Rochester and basically admonishing people for not caring about their orchestra. We've dedicated our lives to this. I'm like, tone deaf, dude. Yeah. Kodak just laid off a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And, by all intents and purposes, publicly, we work 12 hours a week in rehearsal. And, we know that we're back at home, woodshedding and stuff like that. But, dude, read the room, right? And it was just also this, I'd be in rehearsal and I'd be listening to comments around me like, oh, management's ruined my life. I'm like, what? Oh, okay. No. So I really had a crisis there. Like, what am I doing here? Am I about to pursue a career of toxicity in this kind of environment? And it was my last year of doctoral studies, and I'm supposed to wait for that job that has a part-time faculty position that just happens to be also part-time playing in the orchestra in the area. It could be in Omaha. Right. It could be anywhere. I was like, and I have to wait for somebody to die for this opportunity. All right. Had I known then what I know now, right?
Right. Yep.
But I was really getting more invested in arts administration. I was like, how do we turn this around?
Yeah.
Advertising free beer at a concert is not respecting your audience.
Right.
Okay. So my final project at my doctoral studies was a study of tribute band audiences. Because at the same time, tribute bands were just starting to come out.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the funny thing about living in Rochester is that it's on the I-90 corridor, right? So if you're going from west to east in New York State, you start from the west side, you're at Buffalo, and you drive, an hour away, you're in Rochester, another hour away, you're in whatever's next on I-90. It's been a while since I lived there.
Yes.
But, Ithaca, Albany on your way. And in Rochester, actually a northern suburb called Irondequoit. I love communities with weird spellings and weird pronunciations. I don't know. Why am I attracted to weird pronunciations? But anyway, there's a store called the House of Guitars.
Okay.
Infamous local business. And what I mean by infamous is they would also do these really wacky commercials.
Yeah.
If you go back to cable, right?
Yeah.
Like, hop, hop, hop to the House of Guitars. Like, psychic. But anyway, psycho. But anyway, a lot of bands that were going through on the I-90 corridor would stop at the House of Guitars.
Okay.
And one of the bands that was a homegrown band, very popular underground garage band called the Chesterfield Kings.
Okay.
One of the employees there worked with my husband, who also worked there.
Wow.
Right. So, I mean, God bless my husband. He has a master's degree, and we got married before we moved to Rochester together. And he goes into a retail job to support my habit of being a classical musician. God, what a guy. He's a composer.
Okay.
So, anyway, more about him later. But we were there, and I started to meet the bands. There was another person that worked at the House of Guitars that was a member of a band called Dark Side of the Moon.
Okay.
Can you guess the tribute?
I have a feeling, yes. Pink Floyd.
Very good.
Thank you.
But their show was all that album.
Oh, okay.
Cover to cover.
Yeah.
Sound effects.
Yep.
Everything.
Yeah.
And so there was Dark Side of the Moon. There was another tribute band in the area called the Back Doors. Yeah. And there were a few others that I can't remember their names of, but they were some version of the name of the band or an album. Of theirs. And so they're friends, coworkers, and, when Steve was working at the House of Guitars, we had so many really great memories that had absolutely nothing to do with the Eastman School of Music. Backstage at an Aerosmith concert. Right. That was a blast, right? Yeah. Bar hopping with Ricky Nielsen from Cheap Trick.
Get out.
Yeah. Oh my God. And I would have all of these stickers and stuff in my bassoon case. Yeah. And I would have my bassoon case and people were like, who's that? You don't know who Aerosmith? Oh my God. It's just like, woo. Anyway, talk about code switching. Right? But anyway, so I started seeing that the audiences that would go to these tribute band concerts were so into the music. Mm-hmm. And I was so curious about why. Yeah. Why won't you, and so I just happened to have taken a couple of seminars in ethnomusicology that was really talking about the anthropological connections of music to culture. Mm-hmm. And this is all coexisting with our culture is disconnected from classical music, much to our own doing, right? With new music where it's all, it's like, I can't relate to that stuff. Yes. And orchestras would just sneak that in between the overture that, maybe they won't really notice that it's atonal. Like, okay, you're really totally not respecting your audience at all by at least giving them some familiar something to kind of be able to listen to this for something. Yeah. Give them some way to, relate to it, instead of like a maitre d' at a restaurant.
Right.
You're not just going to try frog legs until someone tells you it tastes like chicken. Yeah. These were just things for me, right? So anyway, I decided that I was going to do a case study on audiences of tribute bands. Mm-hmm. And I went to a lot of these concerts and shows and I just, bartered, time. I was smoking at the time. So it was really easy to talk to people when we went out for a smoke break. Right. And just, why are you here? Why do you like it so much? Yeah. And their answers were, well, I can't see the band live, obviously. Right. This is the next best thing. Well, why don't you just stay home and listen to the CD? Because I'm listening with other people who love it as much as I do. Mm-hmm. Right. So it was just this transformative moment for me to really understand what I couldn't articulate. Mm-hmm. But it's that moment of transformation in a community. I'm transformed back to a time that in my life, that I was experiencing while this music was a soundtrack to that. Yeah. And now I'm back there and I'm with other people who connect with it too.
And so is that what you bring to arts administration?
Everything. Yeah. I bring that to everything. Yeah. It's why I bake, because it's a love language that then goes into experiencing. Everybody shares that. Mm-hmm. Right. So when I'm thinking about, what, and there's a couple of thought leaders that I've been very much following for the last couple of years who are talking about changing the narrative, especially in symphonic world, but it extends to all art forms. Yeah. And, I could go back into this diatribe that I have, but ever since 1983 report, A Nation at Risk, that was done by the Department of Education at the beckoning of President Reagan. That report didn't say we need to cut the arts. And people misinterpreted the recommendations of that report by saying, well, we need to cut the arts in order for the students to have more time in math and science, because of course we need more math and science, or we need better scores for that in order to compete with the Japanese. All right. And even when I read that report in the 90s, I'm like, this is stupid. Yeah. It's not really talking about holistic learning for our students.
100%.
And I was part of the Young Audiences of America performing on that at the time. So I was, here's another story I didn't tell you about before, but I was doing this quintet version of Peter and the Wolf. Okay. And so we were doing a presentation at one of the schools in the Rochester area, and our spokesperson was the flutist who at the time was getting ready for her comprehensive exams, which you are taking like 3 days of your life to just barf out everything in your brain about music history and theory and all the things that, it's definitely a big flaming hoop one has to jump through for your degree. So her head's all full of this minute information that one could look up if one needed to. It doesn't need to be
yes,
there. But anyway, I'll tell you about my comps. But anyway, so we're at the end of it. And, she stands up at the applause at the end of the performance and she says, well, kids, this is a group of K through 2, all sitting on the floor of the cafetorium, crisscross applesauce.
Yep.
And the teachers are all sitting in folding chairs that line the walls, right? She stands up. She says, kids, thank you so much. That piece was written by a man named Sergei Prokofiev. Can you say Sergei Prokofiev? Good job. Did you know that Sergei Prokofiev wrote communist propaganda in that piece? And the teacher's like, what? And the students,
Yeah.
So I just stood up and I said, Julie, that is so amazing. Hey, show of hands. How many have watched cartoons? And show of hands, I'm going to pick on someone. Can someone imitate the sound that happens when a cartoon character falls off a cliff? And so, Pam, can you do that on your clarinet? And so we went on that, the idea of a composer creating sounds that sound like fall or falling or sound like a bird, because that's what this was, right? The characters. And do you think the grandfather was happy? He was grumpy, right? Yeah. So it was that kind of thing. At the end of that concert, we're packing up. And the flute player came up to me and she said, how dare you interrupt me?
Oh, get out.
I said, really? Communist propaganda? Second grade?
Kindergarten, second graders.
Yeah, really. And she said, well, I have a kid. You don't have a kid. What do you know about childhood?
Oh, no.
Yeah. Pervasive.
Yeah.
And so the idea of a musician being able to relate to kids because they have one. Yeah. Let's go back to music education theory.
Yeah.
Shall we?
Yeah.
Want to talk about scaffolding? Shall we talk about relationship? So it was really another key moment of, I have an instinct about relating to audiences. So that whole experience in Rochester of all of those different things that happened over the 4 years, really, I didn't know it at the time, but that gave me all of the evidence I need in the purpose that I have now.
That's awesome.
It is awesome. And I'm so grateful for all of those. What the F's? This is, just that you pay attention to your gut. This is wrong.
Yeah.
So after Eastman, I moved to Ohio. It was Steve's turn to focus on his career growth. And I was lucky enough to get a job in an arts organization that was doing an arts integration program for secondary schools in 10 counties of Northwest Ohio and Southeast. There was a lot of driving.
Yeah.
But it was a program called the Muse Machine, which still is operating in Dayton, Ohio. And the whole point of it is to get artists in the classroom, as well as get kids into the regular audiences, not a yellow school bus, but going into a play with the rest of the audience to kind of give them that sense of this is what you can do as an adult, on your own. And how do you relate to that? So, and other things. But I mean, if you go to a program on Broadway, sometimes they will have educator guides. Like if you went to go see Ragtime, there would be this big, thick educator guide that walks you through the cultural context and the historical context of what's happening in that piece. Big connection there. But at the Muse Machine was when I really started to see impact. So it wasn't just an opportunity for me as an audience person to kind of go, what? This doesn't seem right. This seems disrespectful. We're not hitting a connection here. We're just assuming things.
Right.
Assuming our greatness. No. So there was this one performance that I was in a Western Ohio high school. And it was a performance that was a presentation, called The Open Door to the Classical Ballet. And it was designed by Nigel Burgoyne, who was the artistic director of the Toledo Ballet at the time. Okay. It gives you an idea of where we are.
Yeah.
Cornfields.
Yes.
Nothing but cornfields, right? So we're out in this Western suburb high school, and all of the high school kids are packed in their gym. And as an arts administrator, I get to do all the glamorous things like lay down the parlay flooring, sweating up a ton. But the classical open door classical ballet program was a chance for the students to really see the athleticism and the control of a ballet dancer.
Yeah.
So it's not all sparkles and smoke and mirrors of what you see on stage.
Right.
It's the discipline. So it was a male and a female dancer, and they would do some pas de deux work. They would do solo work. But what was so fascinating was this row of, I call them corn-fed high school wrestlers. They were all sitting with their knees like this, just kind of waiting to be bored.
Yes.
And in this adagio work, you have to have a lot of muscle and flexibility to maintain. I mean, if you think about a pirouette, a ballerina pirouette, you know that back muscle is really getting worked out. And the male dancer was doing the same moves as the ballerina, and then went into this low split. And the wrestlers were just because they understand muscle,
right?
They understand flexibility, and they understand stretch and holding and tension. And you could just see that there was a physical connection, tangible connection going on there. And it was one of respect. You know, it's like, I understand the athleticism of this art form. And seeing that moment of impact and understanding, watching that transformation on those kids' faces, that was like a religious experience for me. Wow. It's like they're connecting. They're not saying anything. We're not telling them that ballet is good to watch.
Right.
And good citizens go to this, you know.
Yeah.
They're connecting on some level that means something to them.
And that's what it is. They have to find it on their own. You can't force it down their throat.
Right. And, you know, as part of the open door to classical ballet, after the dances, the director would say, do you know that a lot of football players actually do ballet classes to, you know, keep their feet moving and mobility? And it's, wow. Oh, God. I mean, and ever since that, plus at the time, I was also training to be a docent at the Toledo Museum of Art. Okay. Nationally recognized docent program. Yeah. That incorporates open-ended questioning. So a docent at the Toledo Museum of Art doesn't just stand in front of an object and say, here you see a collection of hexagons in various colors, black, white, and red, that are in an obvious, like, blah, blah, blah. You say, what do you see? And then you move from there. Yeah. Right? So I could be standing in front of a medieval tapestry. It's like, what do you see? Yeah. I see a boar's head on a plate. Okay. Let's talk about that. Yeah. What do you think that means? Well, everybody's like looking at it, so it must be important. Right. Okay, let's talk about that. You know, and then you start filling in information about the, you know, either the iconography or other things, and you know, you tell the mythology story that's going on. But if you just walk up and you talk about the mythology, they're not going to They're not going to have something to hold on to. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say this with the approval of the parents. That of the school, one of the schools from the Muse Machine that came to the museum for a tour. Yeah. And with the complete understanding of this is why we're doing it. Yep. I did something called the Titty Tour. I only said it to the teacher. It was, you know, it was like, but we went around and we looked at nudes from all of these different times. And the kids were like, oh my God, there's bare breasts. Right. Oh my God, there's bare breasts. And by the time we got to like the 10th object that had a bare breast. Yeah. It wasn't that they were desensitized. They were starting to get it. It's like, this means something. That's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah. But it was really funny. Because then I would ever touch, can you bring me on the titty tour? But anyway.
As much as I would love to keep talking about titty tours.
Let's go to the art museum. Let's go.
We are over. I didn't even realize this has been incredible. I feel like we only scratched surfaces
here.
Here.
Well, anyway. Okay, go ahead.
No, we are sponsored by Z-Craft, and they make incredible coffee. They make incredible food. They're the best place in the entire Lehigh Valley. I love
Zeke Zelker.
Oh my gosh. Isn't he just the best human being?
You should see some of his early movies. They're fantastic.
I'll have to find them. I'll ask them for them.
Yes, please.
And, you know, they make great coffee, and you sip the coffee, and sometimes sip happens, as we say here.
Every day, my dear.
Yeah. When is the time that sip happened to Sheila?
All right. Early on. When I was doing this bassoon transition. Yeah. I remember very clearly. I was in wind ensemble at Lawrence University, and the director, Bob Levy, very, very much about the blend and the sound, and we all had to breathe together. And he just had a very intense aspect to his directing. And there was a moment in rehearsal where he just looked at me and said, "Sheila, just don't play."
Wow.
And I felt like Fred Flintstone shrinking down into this. I mean, I was so embarrassed.
Yeah.
And I was so defeated and deflated. It's like, I'm working so hard and I just can't. And it was hard. And after the rehearsal, Bob came up to me and he said, "I want to take you out for some coffee. Let's go."
Yeah.
And he just said, "I want to apologize. That was rude. I know you're working really, really hard. And I don't want you to quit. And I'm just sorry for being such a bull."
Yeah.
And that taught me so much about his passion. It taught me also a lot about his humanity. And that moment was such a way for me to say to myself, I'm going to be making mistakes. My ego's going to get in the way. My vision is going to be, cause me to say harmful things, or to be pushing back in a way that's going to frustrate other people. As long as they know why.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
So I have been a rough employee for a lot of people because I will hold you to that principle. It's not about you.
Yeah.
Right?
That's great.
Yes. That's that moment.
That's the first serious sip happens where, there's a moral to the story. So thank you for doing that.
Cheers.
Cheers. Is there anything that we didn't hit that you want to hit before we wrap it up?
No. I mean, I've got so many stories. I can go on for hours. Just ask my kids. But I think one of the things that I have come to understand about myself in my principles is if I stay true to that, it doesn't matter what happens in the work environment. It could be just something that leadership just isn't ready for.
Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah.
Find the place, surround yourself with people who share that same purpose with you. And I feel that when I'm with the chamber of, when I'm sitting on the chamber board for the Bethlehem, I feel that when I'm at WDIY, I feel that definitely when I'm at the IceHouse and on the school board, I am with people who we are sharing the same purpose and principles and values. And like on the school board, it's not about Democrat or Republican.
Yeah.
It's what's best for these kids.
Yep.
And these kids is all our kids.
Yeah.
Right. So having found that through a lot of pain, through a lot of rejection, it's like, but have you read the mission statement?
Right.
Yeah. It doesn't say we're supposed to serve beer. It says we're supposed to be, sharing this culture.
Yeah.
That gets me up in the morning, and that makes me look in the mirror and go, you're sticking to it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's it.
You just got me up for the day. I mean, I feel like that's true though. It's as long as you're all rowing in the same direction and have the same interest, you can take diverse people, bring them together and accomplish better.
Interest. It's more than interest, I think, though. And there are a lot of musicians in the Lehigh Valley that are there for the moment of the audience coming together with them.
Right.
It is not glorification of me on a stage. It is part of creating this moment of community. Yeah. And that's what I'm talking about. Same thing with the Bethlehem Area School District. Same thing with the chamber. We are bringing people together, and it's not about us as individuals.
Yeah.
That's really key.
Yeah.
Because if you spot the narcissist, believe them. There's no changing that.
Right.
Right.
All right, we're going to end it on that. That is the way to end it. Sheila White, I can't thank you enough. You do so much. You are so busy. So for you to make the time to come here it means a lot. Thank you so much.
Well, Jimmy, thanks for doing this.
Absolutely.
Sláinte, that's Irish.
Sláinte, right? Yes. Sláinte. I won't try to spell it. All right. Thank you, Sheila.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the YMI Talking Podcast. If you enjoyed this and want to hear more content from amazing personalities in the Valley, please subscribe, leave a rating, and drop us a quick review.